Teddy Roosevelt once said, "In the first place, we should insist that if the immigrant who comes here in good faith and becomes an American and assimilates himself to us, he shall be treated on an exact equality with everyone else, for it is an outrage to discriminate against any such man because of creed or birthplace or origin. But this is predicated upon the man's becoming in very fact an American and nothing but an American." He went on to say that Americans should have room for but one sole loyalty, and that is a loyalty to the American people. Today, for many people, immigration is not such a simple issue as it was for Teddy. Right now, a state, Arizona, is facing a heated controversy. It will begin to enforce a new illegal immigration law, SB1070. However, as of yesterday, some of its main and controversial provisions have been put on hold by a judge until they go to trial. Arizona Governor Jan Brewer signed the bill into law on April 23, 2010. She did so in a response to a growing dilemma of illegal immigration. This law effectively allows local and state police to check a person's citizen status if they are involved in any lawful conduct where a reasonable suspicion exists that the person is an alien who is unlawfully present in the United States. There have been numerous suggestions as to why immigrants are coming here illegally. Some point out that Mexico is currently embroiled in a drug war, which the violence from that war is causing the immigrants to come over the border for safety. Others have also suggested that they are coming here to find better work and a better life for themselves and their family. However, all people agree that illegal immigration is a situation that must be remedied as soon as possible. For the border state of Arizona, this good reform is desired and needed. This is perhaps the greatest reason why Arizona actually passed the law. First of all, to protect the borders, but also to push the federal government to begin reforming on a national level. No matter what this legislator's intentions were, with the passing of this bill came controversy, even leading the federal government to call into question its constitutionality. At the heart of this controversy is whether or not SB 1070 is constitutional, according to the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution, and whether or not it would lead to racial profiling by law enforcement officers. Opponents of the immigration law argue that according to the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution, immigration issues should only be handled by the federal government, not by the states. People against this law also are rightly concerned with racial profiling. We have only to look back into the 1960s and see examples of law enforcement officers viewing a person's skin color when deciding how to handle a situation. Each of these concerns that are raised are legitimate and need to be carefully considered before giving support to the Arizona law. First of all, is this law constitutional? I would argue that it is. Immigration certainly comes under federal jurisdiction, and without a doubt, federal law will always trump state law, as was decided in the Supreme Court case of Pliller v. Doe. However, this is not the case of a state stepping above and beyond what the federal law already mandates. To the contrary, SB 1070 was written to match and complement federal law already in place. Governor Sarah Palin said in an interview, "This law in Arizona that has recently been signed, it essentially replicates and duplicates the federal law." Arizona Governor Jan Brewer echoed this sentiment when she said, "What we have done is mirror a federal law." Both of these women recognize that following a federal law with a similar state law, as long as it does not go further than what is federally mandated, is perfectly constitutional. These opinions also follow the Supreme Court case Gibbons v. Ogden, in which it holds that the Supremacy Clause allows federal law to supersede state law if there is outright conflict. There is apparently no outright conflict between federal immigration law already in place and SB 1070. The law even addresses this problem when it says, "The terms of this act regarding immigration shall be construed to have the meanings given to them under federal immigration law. This act shall be implemented in a manner consistent with federal laws regulating immigration." This definitely implies that the SB 1070 was intended to complement federal law, not go beyond what it was originally for. The second controversy opponents of the law are concerned with is whether or not it will lead to racial profiling by law enforcement officers. This is a perfectly reasonable fear when one remembers recent history, the 1960 Civil Rights Movement, and also the early mass immigrations from Ireland, Germany, Asia, and Eastern Europe. So yes, this should be an issue of concern if a problem arises. However, it should not be an argument against enforcing the law. This law is addressing illegal aliens, not a specific nationality. For people to argue this point is just a way to play on the fears of people who truly are appalled at the discrimination of people based on their color of skin. This argument becomes weaker when people begin to realize that SB 1070 actually addresses this very concern. Sean Hannity of Fox News said this: "Now, if protesters actually sat down to read the law, they would find that racial profiling is explicitly prohibited. In fact, proof of citizen can only be requested by the authorities during, quote, a lawful conduct by police, meaning the individual is already suspected of breaking the law. Because this law requires contact being made with a person before their status can be investigated, it flat out prevents racial profiling. For a person to even be investigated, they would have to break a law first. For example, if a person were pulled over for a speeding ticket, then they were found to be driving without a license, which they can't obtain without citizenship, then they would be arrested for both driving without a license and being here illegally. So, this is an area of the law that every natural-born citizen even has to fear, because if they're found driving without a license, they'll be charged with that as well. And I think it's really important to remember that laws are not based on race, but on justice. And it is not just to allow people who have already broken the law to remain here. And it is obvious that every illegal immigrant has broken the law by being here illegally. With this in mind, it seems highly unlikely that this law will cause government-sanctioned racial profiling, because it would apply to all immigrants here illegally, whether they're from China, Mexico, or Norway. The same standards do apply. Now, for many people, I'm sure some of you are wondering, well, what happens if a person is here legally and they are stopped by a law enforcement officer based solely on their color of skin? Now, doesn't that prove that this law is going to cause racial profiling? Well, no, I don't think it does. In this scenario, the law enforcement officer acted against the law. He profiled a person based on their skin color. This is wrong and certainly should not be condoned, and I don't think it is condoned in the law. But this would instead, this is a simple problem of the individual officer. It's his problem. And furthermore, when an argument of this kind arises, I think we need to have to consider whether or not our trust is consistent or not. We trust our police officers to, first of all, protect our communities from burglaries, murders, and other dangers and disturbances. But when issues like this arise, we seem to all of a sudden condemn them and think the worst of our finest citizens. Logically, to me, this does not make sense. Now, ultimately, time will tell whether or not this huge controversy was for naught. As courts make decisions concerning laws about immigration and how law enforcement can enforce them, people can be assured that the controversy over illegal immigration will not go away until the problem is solved. Hopefully, the laws similar to Arizona's SB 1070 are the answer to solve this whole mess, to keep the U.S. safe from drug wars across the border, and to keep immigrants coming to the land of the free and the home of the brave safely and legally. Do you have any questions?
Well, I don't know. That was really good and very informative. So good job. Yes.
I have a question. With the law, is every crime that happens, every person involved in the crime will be asked for their citizenship?
Basically, it's kind of a natural progression. Most crimes, when you're stopped, especially for traffic crimes, you're going to be asked for ID anyway. It's just a natural part. It's when you can't produce ID. That's when they're going to start looking into, are you a citizen, or are you here illegally or legally? That's when they're going to actually start looking into whether or not your status is legal or not.
Okay.
So. Have any other questions?
Interesting. I don't think so.